Well, hello everyone. My name is Amber Kasic, and I am an author, speaker, a former classroom teacher, and educational consultant. And most importantly, I now am serving as an evidential medium, a spiritual medium, and also an end of life coach. And the story I'm going to share with you today is a story of loss, transformation, and most importantly, love. It really gave me the absolute knowing that there is life beyond life, and we are never alone, even when it's unrecognizable to your heart. I experienced a life-changing moment, and what I now have learned is called a shared death experience during the passing of my father from cancer on November 1st, so 111, that's no accident, of 2020. And in a shared death experience, what will often happen is a person is sort of in a way participating in or witnessing the person who's passing, their soul's transition to the other side. We may not recognize that that's what's happening at first, but it's a beautiful moment of transcendence and togetherness. And for me, during my father's passing, well, it was actually about 12 hours before he actually took his last breath. But I now know that death is a process. Our soul is going through a process. We are not simply here and then there. It's all here. All of it is here. And our soul experiences moments of coming in and out of this reality and those higher planes of existence. So about 12 hours before my dad actually took his last breath, he was at home in the living room under hospice care. I was in a recliner right alongside his hospice bed. And I had already had my last conversation with my dad in the middle of the night, 3 nights prior, in a moment of his lucidity. We agreed upon a sign together. It was a very vulnerable conversation. I remember almost not even asking him if we could come up with a sign together, because, he didn't really want to talk about his death or his passing. But I was very thankful that I had done that. And in this moment before he passed, him and I were just sort of together holding hands. He wasn't speaking anymore. We had already had our last conversation in the middle of the night when we agreed upon that sign together. And I was thinking about how I'm no longer going to hear my dad's voice. I was thinking about all these things left unsaid and done. While my dad and I loved each other very much, our relationship was also complicated, and we had difficult history, but I always felt connected to him in a way that I couldn't quite explain. I was contemplating all this, the beauty of that, the pain of it all, the fact that we never really exchanged direct words of closure, forgiveness, healing. And in that moment, I had this realization that even though it felt like he was already gone because he was so unconscious, he was still my dad. He was still here. His hand was still warm. And because of that, I just let go of all of the thinking. And I became fully present and fully focused on simply unconditional love. And just basking in that love for a few minutes, I suddenly, of course, because my eyes were closed, I just started noticing these swirls of purple kind of swirling in my mind's vision. And while that wasn't normal for me, I didn't really think much of it. And then I felt this warmth that started at the top of my head, and it just sort of slowly made its way down my body, literally all the way to the tips of my toes. And I remember thinking, oh, the sun must be coming in the window and just kind of, playing tricks on me. I didn't think I was having any kind of experience. But then with full clarity, I felt what I can only describe as a force enter my back. And the reason why I say the word a force is because it's like wind, but not, because it wasn't on my skin and it wasn't physically in the air, but I felt this whoosh literally enter my body. And that force was just sort of resting right in the center of my chest. And this experience was so new. My brain had no time to judge it. It didn't have anything to judge it against, because I had never in my life felt a feeling like this. And that force was just doing slow circles in the center of my chest, what I would now call my heart center. But at that time, I would have never used a word like that. But here it was just circling, and I could only pay attention to it without even deciding what it was, because I was so surprised at what was happening. And it was almost like slowing down, almost like, trying to catch my brain's attention. And that slow circling then moved to my shoulder, and it paused, like on the inside of my body. This isn't on my skin, on the inside of my body. And it paused, and then I felt it slowly travel down my arm and into my hand, and I was holding my dad's hand. And then I knew it like knowing the sky is blue, that force, that feeling went into my dad too. I knew it. And I felt this burst of joy and love. And I just had this knowing we are eternally bonded and all is well. Everything is fine. I didn't know why I felt that way. I mean, it wasn't like my brain made the choice and I processed all of this stuff and now I'm deciding. This force just overtook me and gave me this knowing. And I remember hugging my dad and saying, it just flew out my mouth, Dad, I don't know what that was, but I know you felt it too. You take all that love and light in your core with you, and you leave the old news behind. Expressions like love and light, I have heard those before, but it wasn't a part of my vocabulary at all at this time in my life. I didn't say that to people, but it just that's what seemed to make sense. And what I was really saying to my dad was, pass with peace, because all the stuff of us, the complications of us, the things that aren't really a part of our essence, but they're the result of our conditioning and how we, grew up and different events that happened to us. I just knew in that moment that none of that mattered. And in your core, you are this beautiful human being, generous, caring, loving, and take that with you and leave the old news behind. And I gave my dad the biggest hug. He couldn't respond. He had been unconscious for days. And I just absolutely knew that all was well, that he was fine. I knew that it didn't matter that he was still breathing technically. I knew in that moment that his soul had just moved on. I knew that. And when I left, I had to leave my parents' house. I had been there for the whole week, and I had promised my family I would spend some time with them that evening. And when I left, I felt joy. I thought there was something wrong with me. I blasted music in the car on the way home and sang. And I remember thinking, what is wrong with me? But I knew that everything was well. And then my dad and I were eternally bonded. It didn't even matter what that meant. It didn't even matter. I just knew it. I did go back later that evening, back to my parents' house. And the second I held my dad's hand, I knew he was already gone. It didn't matter that there was still breathing going on. I knew, I felt his life was already gone. This is just this body finishing its process. And it was in the middle of the night. Actually, I love this. It was during the daylight savings time change on November 1st. So on 1/1/1, at approximately 3:30 in the morning, we didn't even know what time to write on the death certificate because it was during the time change. My dad finally took that last breath. And I was okay because I knew that he was absolutely fine. I didn't have thoughts at that time about what that meant, what heaven was like. I had a faith, but maybe not in a super traditional sense. I just believed that there is something much bigger than our brains can comprehend. But I wasn't at that time very rigid in what I felt, he would have been experiencing and what was exactly he going to encounter. I didn't really know, but I knew that he was fine and all was well. And about 8 hours after he passed away, when I was already back at home in the late morning, I decided to drive to a park and go for a walk. And I was sitting in the car in the parking lot, and I finally just let some tears flow because I was emotionally exhausted. It wasn't even grief over the loss. It was the exhaustion of just such the emotions of the week and all that we had been through together. And as I was crying, I heard my dad's actual voice, but in my mind, not outside in my ear, in my mind. And it said, "You've cried enough tears over me in your life. Get out of the car." And it made me pause. And of course, I'm making that up. Like, of course, I'm just making up his voice. But I thought to myself, gee, I have cried enough tears over my dad in my life. And so I got out of the car and started on my walk. And as I was walking, I just said to myself, I didn't think I wasn't communicating to my dad with any intention, but I just said to myself, "Gee, Dad, I hope you're all right." And instantaneously, without even a second hesitation, his voice was in my mind saying, "I'm just fine, Amber. I'm going to stick around here a while and help some people. And I'm happy about it." In his own voice. And I stopped walking. I stopped walking because a part of me knew I were making that up as Amber, his actual voice in my mind, saying that. I would have never come up with that. I would have said as Amber, "It's wonderful here, Amber. It's so beautiful. I'm with our dogs, Thunder and Bailey, and I've seen my mom and my granddad, and you're going to see everyone too, and I'm here waiting for you, and I can't wait to see you again." That's what I, as Amber, would have made up. I would have never invented his voice to say, "I'm going to stick around here a while and help some, and I'm happy about it." It's not that I absolutely believed in that moment that I was experiencing communication with my dad, but there was a tug that something isn't coming from me. But I didn't really believe it totally at first. And as the next weeks followed, I started experiencing, simply felt like his felt presence. I just felt his presence, but I didn't know what that meant, and I didn't really believe that. But I would say that just to myself because I was having these experiences of sort of feeling him around me. 24 hours after he passed away in the evening, not even quite 24 hours, about 18 hours after he passed away, I went for a walk in a park at dusk, and I was with my husband, and we hadn't spent any time together all week because I was with my dad. So I was just telling him all of the experiences of the week. I told my husband about the last conversation that I had in the middle of the night with my dad, where we agreed upon a sign together. And that conversation in the middle of the night went something like this. In his moment of lucidity, I said, "Dad, do you think maybe in all vulnerability, we could come up with a sign together?" And he kind of looked at me, and I said, "I asked you that in an email last week and you didn't write me back." He made a little joke and said, "Well, I better get right on that then." Kind of laughed, like, obviously he can't hardly move his hands, let alone write an email. And I said, "Well, what do you think, Dad? Can we make a sign?" And he didn't say anything. So I just suggested, I said, "How about a strong wind that just out of nowhere kind of hits my face?" And he grunted, and I kind of took that as no or a disapproval. My dad and I share a real love of animals. And so I next said, "How about just a random animal that just sort of appears out of nowhere unexpectedly right in my direct path?" And again, I just got kind of a grunt. And so I didn't know if that was an approval or a disapproval. And then he kind of nodded his head like this. And so I said, how about a deer, Dad? Right in my direct walking path. And my dad looked at me directly in the eyes and he said, look in its eyes, you'll just know. And I thanked my heart in that moment and was so glad that I had chosen that moment of vulnerability. And so now, almost 24 hours after my dad passed, here I am with my husband walking at dusk in this park, and I'm telling him the events of the week. And as I get to that story about our last conversation in the middle of the night, what happens? All of a sudden, it wasn't just a one moment, but all of a sudden, the wind became overwhelming wind. And I'm proceeding with my story and I'm telling him about the wind and then how I suggested a random animal. And then what happens? Here comes this black lab straight up to us in the park with no collar, no owner anywhere around, barking at us. And we just kind of keep walking and the black lab goes off, but the lab keeps turning around and barking at us. And even my husband is like, there's something about this that it's too weird all at the same time. And then I told him about the deer, but this lab is getting farther and farther, but yet keeps turning around and barking at us. And so just on a whim, we decided to follow that dog. And where did it go? It ran all the way to a nearby cemetery. By then we thought, okay, we got to help this dog find its home, right? There's no owner anywhere. The dog doesn't even have a collar. So we got back in our car. We brought the car over to the cemetery, hoping we would still find the dog. And we did see the dog off in the distance who's there barking at us. And we flew open the van door and that dog just comes running from across the cemetery, quite a ways away, maybe, 30, 40 yards, and just hops right in our car like we knew each other for the last 5 years. And, there's about 3 neighborhoods that are kind of surrounding that park where we were walking and a few homes that are pretty darn close to the park. So we drove to various homes and yes, we ended up eventually finding that dog's home and its owner. And as we were leaving the driveway after dropping the dog off at its home, and we turn the corner and I slam on the brakes because what is right in my direct path? A young buck in the middle of the road, and it is just staring at me. It didn't run off, it just stared. And I watched that, and my husband watched that young buck kind of take some slow steps to the side of the car, just to the edge of the road. I'm in the passenger seat, probably about 5 feet from my car window. And it is just right there staring at me. The window was rolled down. I was bawling and crying and saying, thank you so much. And Dad, I just knew in my heart this was the sign. I knew it in my heart. And I was yelling to the deer, you're so beautiful. And thank you so much, Dad, for bringing me this sign. Because for me in that moment, it gave me the confirmation that he indeed was well. And everything was okay. And it also felt like a confirmation of everything that I had experienced in those hours before he was passing. And my husband, who didn't believe in any of this stuff, didn't believe in signs, didn't believe in synchronicities, really was very, at that time, agnostic in life. And he looked at me and said, that is your dad. It has to be your dad. There's no other way. My dad was taking me on a journey from the other side. It was a journey of transformation, healing, and most importantly, love. In this journey of transformation, over the course of the next 3 to 6 months, my dad led me to understand that our reality is so much greater than we could ever imagine it to be. And it is all here. It is not there. It's not up in the sky. It is here. And to get in touch with that reality, we truly need to just begin a journey within. And my dad was about to show me how to do that and really bring me along, almost like breadcrumbs down a path to really expose me to how ever present our loved ones are, how much they care for us, how much they understand us. My dad once said to me in a meditation, I understand you better than you understand yourself now. And I believe that. And in that journey of expanding my understanding of reality, he was always showing up with signs and synchronicities and fun moments, moments of wonder and joy, and moments of evidence, pure evidence that I couldn't possibly be having these experiences unless it was directly coming from him. And I'll give two examples of just the absolute wonder of that, one that's fun and one that's very heartfelt. In one moment, it was right around Christmas time, and by now I mostly believed that I was really experiencing my dad, but I wasn't 100% on board, because this is a part of a spiritual journey. We in the physical world live in ego, and that's not a bad thing, but our ego is how we make sense of the world. The fact that this table is hard, the fact that I'm here with you on Monday, June 2nd at such and such time, that I live in this state, right? Our brain is what is perceiving what is real. But the spiritual journey is a spiritual journey of the heart. And it's going to have to teach the ego how to at least somewhat let go of its grip on what is reality, because it's not that our reality is wrong, it's that it's so much bigger. In this beautiful moment, I was actually in the middle of work. I was working on a project, typing away furiously at the computer. And by now, I did understand when my dad was making his presence known. I would feel a pressure on my left side. I'd often get an itch on my face or a ringing in my ear. And it would allow me to just pause and kind of set what I was doing mentally aside for a minute and just be open and sort of tune in to this felt presence. And his voice was in my mind like it was in those initial hours after he passed. And he said, call your mom right now. She's eating pudding and she's sad. Wow. I had just started telling my mom a little bit about what I thought I was experiencing, but I was still a little bit afraid, because what if I'm making it all up? And also, what if she didn't believe me? And it was a little scary to delve into it all. And I thought about it, and I picked up the phone to call her. And then I just got too afraid, because what if she's not eating pudding right now? What if she's not crying? And I'm going to be making all this up, and then she's going to think I'm making it all up, and that would just feel horrible. And so I put the phone down, and then I felt that presence again, and I felt my dad's disappointment. But it was not judgmental disappointment. He wasn't judging me. He understood why it was hard, but I felt the disappointment. So then I thought about it for another 10 minutes or so. And then I finally picked up the phone, and I just thought, what the heck? So I called my mom, and she picks up the phone, and I can tell she's been crying. And I'm saying, what's wrong, Mom? And she's saying, oh, the TV's all out and the cable people are here, but they can't figure out what's wrong. And, you know, my dad would normally deal with all this stuff. And it was just a reminder for her that she's alone and she has to deal with all these kinds of things now. And it was causing her a lot of grief. And I said, Mom, can I ask you something? Were you just eating pudding about 10 minutes ago? And she's crying, going, yes, why are you asking me that? And then it was like she realized it, and she paused and said, why are you asking me that? And so I said, well, I felt Dad's presence, and he said, call Mom. She's sad and eating pudding right now. I literally have not seen my mom eat pudding since I was a kid. Now, I have a grandson. She probably bought some for him when he's there sometime or another. I don't buy pudding. We don't eat it in my house. My grandson doesn't ask for pudding. I have not seen my mom eat pudding in decades. I knew without a doubt that absolutely came from my dad. My mom knew in that moment, even though I had been telling her some things and she kind of believed, but for her, that was her joyful, so joyful moment of this is real and I am not alone. And my dad knows what's going on in her life, as your loved ones do too, if you're listening to this. Your loved ones know what's going on in your life. They know your feelings. They know your thoughts. And it brought her so much joy and relief in that moment. And that was right around Christmas time. And I remember it's like I sort of felt like that little girl in A Miracle on 34th Street who finally at the end of the movie just says, I believe, I believe, I believe. And she finally believes in Santa Claus. And I know this sounds so fanciful, but for me, I finally believed without a doubt in my body that I'm experiencing this communication with my dad. And so those first few months were about him just exposing me to, I'm really here, I'm really here. And there were, signs and synchronicities and all those kinds of small things. In a very fun moment, I was waking up every morning with a song in my head. Every single morning. Every single morning. I'd wake up and a song would be playing in my head. Many of them from the 60s and 70s, sometimes 80s. And on one particular morning, I woke up with these song lyrics that I had never heard before. Up, up and away, my beautiful balloon, we float among the stars together, you and I. It was like just the lyrics. And I didn't hear the whole song, but I knew it was a song. And so I Googled it. And haha, how funny that the original writers are the fifth dimension. And so I added it to this playlist because I had been building a playlist of songs that my dad had been putting in my head every single morning when I woke up. I love this because it's also such a beautiful healing gesture. 10 days before my dad died, I wrote him an email and asked him for a list of 10 songs that I could put on a playlist that would remind me of him, like 10 of his songs that he loved. He was adding to my playlist from heaven. And if you would have told me that 5 years ago, I would have felt pity for me. Like, how sad does a person have to be to think that that's possible? I would have felt complete pity for that. But it's real. It is absolutely real because we are not only human, and there is more happening beyond our biological senses than we can comprehend. I went for a walk that day, actually a run. I went for a run that day in the park, and it was the end of winter. So, there's still snow on the ground, but it was starting to really melt. So you could start to see the gravel underneath the snow. And I'm running in this park. I'm all by myself. There's nobody around. And I'm listening to my playlist, and that song is on. And I'm running and I'm running. I'm just running. And all of a sudden, I didn't hear a voice. I just feel stop. And by now, I'm listening. By now, I'm listening to what my body is feeling. I'm listening to my intuition. I'm listening to the actual voice in my head. And I stopped. And then I feel turn around, like run in the opposite direction. And at this point, I'm just following the breadcrumbs wherever they take me, because I now understand that I'm being led on a journey every day. And so I run in the other direction, and I'm running, and then I feel again, stop. So I stop. And I'm kind of just, this song is playing in my head. Up, up and away, my beautiful balloon will float among the stars together, you and I. I'm listening to that and I'm going, why am I here? And then I have this nudge to look down. And so I look down, and what is under my feet? Balloon and stars, confetti. I am literally standing atop of balloon and stars confetti while listening to the song that was in my head when I woke up in the morning. Up, up and away, my beautiful balloon will float among the stars together, you and I. It gave me so much joy and wonder. I had such a huge smile. I was laughing because it was so darn beautiful and fun, and so much fun. And these were two key moments, that moment and that moment with my mom, where I really knew without a doubt, I'm being led down this path of after-death communication and personal transformation. In the months that followed, what occurred next was healing. messages of healing from my dad. By now, I'm beginning a meditation practice. Wasn't a meditator before, maybe dabbled in it like a decade ago, just here and there, because I'd heard it was so helpful, but it wasn't something that I did regularly or had even remotely any type of practice in. But somehow I knew that when I'm quieting my mind and able to tune into this other energy that I'm feeling, that's where that magic is. And so I started a meditation journey. And as I began that meditation journey, I began to have more conversational back and forth, direct communication with my dad. And I had so many messages from him of healing and love and just apologies, beauty. He really wanted to share that he understood the hard things that had affected me, wanted me to feel how much he very much loved me, and also helped me just sort of see how sometimes we were just coming from different perspectives. Sometimes, for lack of a better word, and because he said it to me once, he was just a jackass. Other times, it was simply that we were just looking at it from a different lens. But I felt so much love and healing from him. And that too came with evidence. In this one moment of such amazing transmission, I mean, almost like line by line apologies and understanding. And at the end, even though by now I knew I was having this communication with him, I'm living in the human world. I want evidence. Show me, tell me, how do I know this is really you, even though I so felt you when you gave this to me? And he said to me in his voice, your mom will give you something tomorrow. And then he showed me an image of an orange, just an orange, and a cowboy saddle. That's weird. That's very random. And at first I wondered if the two were connected. What is my mom going to give me tomorrow? And an orange and a cowboy saddle? And then I had this knowing, go look in your email. So I went in my email. I had a whole bunch of emails from my dad that I never opened on purpose, because the whole year before he died, he would send me stupid little videos, animal videos, funny little videos, all kinds of things. And I did open a lot of them, but sometimes I didn't open them on purpose so that I could keep them for when he was gone. And I told him that one day, Dad, I hope you don't mind, but I'm not opening all of these. I want to keep some for when you're not here anymore. Side note, I would never do that. If I could go back and redo all this, I would not do that. My dad was trying to connect with me. And instead of opening them and just being present and connecting with him, I was trying to prevent something that I can't control, his passing, and hold on to him past a time that I'm not going to be able to hold on to him anymore. And I was robbing him of moments and fun and laughter, and me. I was robbing that of me too. But these are the types of lessons that I've now learned from my dad in spirit. And so in these emails that were unopened, I saw one still in black bold, the subject, because I hadn't opened it, and it said, how an artist peels an orange. That's all it said. So because of that orange image he gave me, I opened that email. And there was no words in it except the video that I had never watched. So I watched the video, and it was literally man peeling an orange, but like all in one, 30-second peel. And as he unraveled his whole peel at the end, what did his peel make? A horse. My dad had told me, your mom will give you something tomorrow. We're coming to that. And then he gave me an image of an orange and a cowboy saddle. And here is that orange peel all in one being rolled out into the image of a horse. So fun. And I knew that was from my dad. And the very next day, what did my mom give me? I'm actually going to grab it off my wall here. My mom had found in my dad's shirt pocket our plane ticket together. My dad and I had taken a trip together in 2006 to Peru. For 14 years, my dad had this plane ticket in his shirt pocket, and I had no idea. And she gave that ticket to me, which now sits on my wall here in my office, the very next day. And I knew in that moment, not only that it was just another validation that I really did experience all this beautiful healing message from my dad, But I also felt in that moment how much my dad really did love me. It's not that he never said he loved me, but I think just some of our stuff from my childhood and just from other circumstances in life, maybe some part of me was just still unhealed and unsure. I know that sounds not silly hard. Like, I knew he loved me, but did he love me? That's how I felt. And when my mom gave me this plane ticket that had been in my dad's pocket for 14 years, I felt love. And then, of course, I had been given all those healing messages in that meditative experience. All of this, my shared death experience, my after-death communication with him leading me down this breadcrumb path of discovery, it helped me in two ways. One, I began to learn we are all connected, all of us, to the underlying essence of what makes up everything. There is no separation. We're connected to the underlying essence that has created everything. And it also just totally transformed in so many ways my life. Not only personally, through healing, through spiritual understanding. I still have my same personality, my same beliefs, my same values, my same morals. And I mess up. I mess up like any other human. But I definitely have a much bigger picture now. I have a lot more peace inside, have a lot more contentment, have a lot more presence, childlike wonder, joy, and my purpose has changed. My purpose has entirely changed. My identity, really, for 20 years was teacher. It wasn't just a job, it was an identity. And now, instead of being in education, instead of helping students and helping families and helping children with knowledge and learning, I'm helping all of you understand that you are connected to the underlying essence of everything. You are not separate from your loved ones that have passed on. There can be no other way than connection. This is just a matter of learning how to clear the trees to see what's already right here. And while I know that I probably was meant to become a medium, and so not everyone may experience all of this in the same way that I did, this connection isn't just here for me. I wasn't sprinkled with some kind of magic dust. That's not what this is. There is a science that we are just beginning to tap into that is fostering this connection. But it's also not just science. There is also a divinity and an orchestration and a love and a wonder that goes beyond human understanding. And I'll leave with this moment when I finally said to myself, I'm a medium and I have to accept this. I did not want to be a medium. I was not trying to be a medium, but my dad was nudging me to be a medium. And on the year anniversary, actually, it was his birthday, the year after he passed. So it was literally 2 weeks shy of the day he passed. My dad had just turned 75 right before he passed away. October 15th, 2021. My family and I, my mom, myself, my husband and child, we drove 8 hours to my childhood home to spread my dad's ashes behind the log home that my parents had built on some land. We no longer live there. It was 8 hours away. We haven't lived there in over a decade. I didn't know if the person that lived there now was going to let me do this, but I wanted to ask. So I knocked on the door on my dad's birthday. I told him a little bit of who I was, told him why I was there, that I wanted to spread these ashes. And he was very kind and let me do that. We had this beautiful moment. My 5-year-old son used a bird call and called in some birds behind the house there, and we spread the ashes. And I didn't feel my dad. I didn't have a moment of connection with him, but it doesn't matter. Even when you don't feel your loved ones, they are there. And they're fully aware of what's going on in your life. And especially when you're thinking of them, sending them love, feeling love for them. The next morning, by now I was in my regular meditation practice. My meditation practice wasn't just for connecting, it's just for sitting in that full presence and peace in the heart. And I was doing that the next morning. But all of a sudden, now it's not just my dad. I felt this man come into my space in spirit. I felt a woman in spirit come into my space. And somehow I just knew this is the brother and the mother of that man that is now living in my childhood log home. And I grabbed a pad of paper and a pen, and this man shared with me that he was a teacher in life. He shared with me this feeling I had in my stomach of little pinpricks. And I just knew this man gave himself daily injections. And this is how mediumship works. It's not just information. I feel the illnesses, the feelings, the emotions, the personalities of the people in spirit. And I felt this man had to give himself daily injections. So I wrote that down. I wrote down a few other pieces of evidence. And then this woman that I had felt was this mother comes in stronger to my awareness, and she's telling me how she loved her mailbox flowers, how she lived well into her 90s, that she took a walk to the mailbox every day, almost until she couldn't, she wasn't living anymore. Gave me some beautiful messages of appreciation for her son, the man in the log home. And then she showed me this white and green kitchen pot holder. So white pot holder that had a green and yellow adornment flower in the center. And I just felt this is passed down from the family, within the family. And it was so special. And I wrote all that down. And then lastly, like before they drew back from my awareness, I saw a bird in a box, and all I wrote down was special bird in a box. That's what I wrote down at the very top of the little hotel notepad. And it was the last thing before they exited my awareness. And I looked at this pad of paper and I thought, I cannot go back to this man's house and tell him this. Hey, what if this is wrong? What if I'm making this all up? What if he doesn't believe this? And nor is that really my style. It kind of violates what I feel like are ethics and boundaries. And, I don't just go around the street like, hey, trying to feel people's loved ones, right? That's not what this is about. And it didn't feel right to me, but something in me felt like a mandate, like I have to go there and give him this information. And so I thought about it and I thought, okay, I'm not going to go there and just tell him everything. I just need to be honest and tell him, I've been having these experiences with my dad. I feel I experienced your family today, and I wrote it all down. Would you like to see the paper? I felt that was the ethical way of giving him this information. So that's what I did. I drove back up to that house. I got out of the car, and this is a really special moment. I saw, as I got out of the car, like off in the distance, a little cross in the yard. Like when we bury a dog, we might put a little cross marker. And so I used that as conversation starter, because he came out of the house before I could even get to the door. And I said, oh, Larry, that was his name. You must have had a dog that passed. I had a dog that lived here. His name was Thunder. He was really special. By now, he's kind of walked over to me and he looked at me and he gave me this expression that said, should I really tell her? And he was kind of half smiling. And then he must have decided I felt safe. And he said, I cared for my brother for a long time. He lived with me before he passed. And he developed such a love of hummingbirds. And one day, one flew into this big window here on the house and it died. And he felt so bad. And we made a special box together and we buried the hummingbird there. It's not a dog, it's a hummingbird. And I looked down on my paper. The very first thing that I had written on that paper was special bird in a box. And now I felt safe. And I told Larry, I didn't tell you this yesterday, but I've been experiencing communication with my dad. I couldn't say I was a medium. I couldn't. I wasn't even ready to accept it for myself. And I said to him, I think I experienced your brother today. And I think I experienced your mother. I didn't even know if he had a brother. But now he had said that, and I knew. And I asked him, would you like to see this paper? So I handed it over to him, and he was silent and just read it all. And I was scared, wondering, what is he thinking? Is this crazy? What am I doing here? And he was just sort of nodding. And he looked up at me and he said, my brother was a teacher, and he had diabetes. He did have to give himself daily injections. And my mother, she walked to the mailbox every day until she couldn't anymore. And she loved her mailbox flowers. She planted them at the mailbox every single year. And then he said, will you hold on a second? And he went inside. He was gone for about 5 minutes, and he came out, and he was holding that white kitchen pot holder with the green and yellow adorned flower. And he said to me, Amber, I had to go through boxes to find this. This was passed down in my family. My mother's father made it for her. And it hung in our kitchen for a long time, and we were never allowed to use it. It was so special. You could have never known about this. And I felt such joy in my heart simply because I knew that was his mother then and his brother. And they had messages of appreciation to share with him and just love and that they're well. And we exchanged phone numbers. I don't think he quite knew what to make of it all, but he couldn't deny those facts, and he couldn't deny that kitchen pot holder. A week later, he called me. He said, Amber, I have been thinking about this all week. And I do believe it was real, but I have to ask you something. Why me? And I said, Larry, I'm so glad you asked this, because I've been asking myself the same thing for a year. Why me? Why am I experiencing this connection with my loved ones? And here you are asking me, why are my loved ones connecting to me through you? And I told him, I know the answer. It's the same for both of us. Because you are worthy. You are worthy of hearing that love from your loved ones. You are worthy of hearing that connection from your loved ones and feeling that. You're worthy of being cared for. You're worthy of knowing you are not alone. When I hung up the phone that day with tears in my eyes, I said, I am a medium, and I have to accept this. It's a beautiful gift to offer others. And my dad helps teach me that. My dad has taught me there is life beyond life, and connection and wonder and joy and love and healing. There is life beyond life. The other side is really just here. It's all here, and it's all love. And I thank you for listening to my story today. And I hope that you will consider for yourself moments of your own connection with loved ones. The synchronicities that show up, the signs that show up for you. You got to trust that. Let the love in. Let the love in. Thank you all so much.